Welcome back to the HPE Discover Coffee Talks. I'm Alistair Cook, and we are joined today by a bunch of people to talk about the GreenLake hybrid cloud solution. So we have John Treadway and Craig Routledge, and along the end, Daniel Newman. Can I get you guys to quickly introduce yourselves and then get into this discussion around this hybrid cloud thing, which I'm sure is just a myth?
It's a myth, yeah. So John Treadway, I run strategy and portfolio for Cloud Technology Partners. We're a company that was acquired by HPE back in September. Born in the cloud, consulting, professional services, implementation, migration, AWS, Azure, Google partner, and we've done over 500 engagements getting people to the public cloud, mostly large enterprise. And that's me.
Thanks, John. So, Craig Routledge, good afternoon, everyone. I'm responsible for go-to-market for our GreenLake consumption business. I've been with the business for the last 5.5 years, and so been part of the team that turned it from in my case, it was a part-time job. It's now a full-time job, and we now have over 550 customers in this platform. And increasingly, as John will allude to, what started life as a private cloud business has increasingly become a hybrid world, and so the announcements over the last couple of days have been very exciting for us.
Daniel Newman, I changed seats temporarily to come sit on this end of the table. I am the principal analyst at Futurum Research and Forbes contributor and MarketWatch Wall Street Journal contributor, and I'm here to add some color to the conversation around some recent research that we did around consumption-based IT and GreenLake services. So ask them the hard questions and ask me about the research.
So a bit of context, if I can, just to help set the scene here. So GreenLake as a business is 7 years old now in HP. Over 500 customers, more than $1 billion under service contract. It's a true service business. It sits inside our Pointnext business unit, and you may have heard Anna Pinchuk talking about that on stage. It is completely focused on providing that cloud-like experience to our customer, originally with the goal of a private cloud domain, as I would call it. But increasingly over the last 15 months or so, we have started to focus on the hybrid world more and more. And that was part of the logic behind the acquisition of CTP, which has been borne out by the results and the reactions that we've had from the customer to the play. We made some tactical acquisitions in terms of some of the metering technology that we use to help manage what was originally the private world, but now the true hybrid world. Thank God the air conditioning's gone off. That's great, actually, much better. And we bought a company called Cloud Cruiser about 18 months ago, and we've been re-engineering that intellectual property. And that's a key underpin, didn't last long, did it, the freedom there? A key underpinning to the hybrid cloud initiative that we announced on stage. In fact, there were two initiatives. Our GreenLake consumption business was primarily a direct business. And that was a strategic choice we made about 5 years ago on the basis that it was actually easier for us to fix things when they went wrong. If we were pioneering, what we didn't want to do is pioneer through a resale channel and out to end users. We wanted to have direct control of the transactions, being able to rectify any design errors and flaws. Now we've got absolute confidence that this is industrial strength as well as now industrial scale. We launched a very robust indirect proposition on stage. And in fact, most of my time since then has been taken up with talking to partners and resellers in groups or individually and bringing them up to date with that proposition. And that's great in terms of it expands our market for us. It expands the market for our resellers and helps them move into a consumption world with a value-added service. But strategically, of the two announcements, the more important is the hybrid cloud announcement that came out as well this week. And that's probably where I segue over to you, John, is that?
Yeah, that'll work pretty well, Craig. So there's a pretty big announcement in the context of, certainly from a CTP perspective. So, and actually, I've known Tim for a while. I've been doing the public cloud thing for a long time. Actually, was a alpha tester of EC2 back in 2006. So I kind of go back to the beginning days. And I joined Cloud Technology Partners in 2012 so that I could be just focused on getting enterprises to the cloud and doing all this real interesting stuff that we do. And the bulk of our business for the last several years has really been all about AWS, Azure, and Google, right? So we've become the public cloud experts. And in the consumption model, right, the public cloud is all about the consumption model. And in fact, part of the value proposition of GreenLake in the consumption model was to kind of match speed, if you will, with what's going on in the public cloud on that basis. So we've always been in the consumption business, if you will, on the public cloud side, but there's more to it, right? It is a hybrid world, and even in our most bullish days on public cloud, nobody within CTP would have ever said that everything's going to go to AWS and Azure and Google, and that nothing would be left on premise, right? In fact, for a lot of our clients where we work very closely with financial institutions and other regulated businesses, telcos, et cetera, it's a very small percentage that's going to the public cloud for most of them at this point. So what do we want to do, right? So the model that we do on the services side, professional services side, for public cloud works very well on the private cloud as well. Meaning you still have to worry about security, you still have to worry about your architecture, you still have to worry about automation and infrastructure as code, DevOps, and all those components, right? And so we have GreenLake Flex Capacity, and we have now Azure Stack, right? Azure Stack on HPE Kit, and then we have Azure Stack on HPE Kit deliverable under Flex Capacity, so you can get straight off Flex Capacity for Azure Stack, and now you have an actual real cloud designed by Microsoft and software written by Microsoft running in your data center, but you're doing it on a consumption basis. All right, so we kind of get to that point. So now we have this really nice hybrid model, consumption on-prem, consumption in the public cloud that I can get. But there's got to be more to that, right? This model is actually really complicated. It turns out that a lot of our clients say, we love the model, but we don't know how to operate it. We don't want to learn how to operate it today, or if we do, we don't want to wait the 2 years that it takes to transform the business and transform the technology, transform the people, because this is really more about the people than it is about the technology. So what can we do now to get started and actually start moving at scale and at speed? So that's where CTP has been doing all this work on getting people to the cloud, but then we turn it over to our clients. And it's a multi-year journey to get them to scale. It's a lot of money, a lot of time. So now let's deliver that experience, but having us kind of manage and operate it for you, delivering the entire thing as a consumption process, but also with patch and config and other operational services that you would need to build using cloud native people, cloud natives, and cloud native tooling and processes that we've been building for our clients for the last several years. So we know how to do this. We've been doing it for our clients. Now we're going to do it in terms of actually running it for our clients and managing it. So I'll get Azure Stack on-prem. I'll get Azure in the public cloud. I'll get AWS, all from HPE with one consistent experience, with a consistent architecture, managed all the same way with the same tooling, and delivered to you as a service, right? So now it's consumption of consumption, if you will. So that's the bulk of this. That's what this announcement is all about. Is GreenLake, HPE GreenLake Hybrid Cloud is about giving you that full hybrid cloud model, consumption with full operational management of that environment, right? So now you can start tomorrow. We can get you onboarded, tomorrow being when we deliver it at the end of our fiscal year, but get you fully onboarded, running your applications in the cloud in a matter of a few weeks, and start to do that at scale. We can bring the next app, then the next app, and next app, because we're already mature. We're at a very high level of maturity with our tooling and processes. Most of our clients start off at a very low level of maturity and have to go through that progression. We're already there. That accelerates the time that it accelerates how quickly they can move to the cloud and start getting that advantage, the advantages of agility, right? The scale, the platform services, and everything else that they want to take advantage of. But it takes too long for them to get there on their own. That doesn't mean that we won't transform them along the way, but we can at least get started faster. You got a question? Wait, one more.
So what exactly are you bringing to the customer? Is it a series of processes beyond the hardware and the flex capacity acquisition model, right? Is it an orchestration layer? Is it training? Is it all of the above?
Well, it's all of the above. So the category, if you will, is public or hybrid cloud MSP in that context, right? It's not a broad scale of managed services, kind of like the old days. It's a very, very specific operational set of services where we will run your cloud program for you, right? So you have IT operations people in your own business, and you got to run your cloud program. Mm-hmm. Who's going to monitor, do security, compliance, cost control, and management in your own enterprise, right? You have to get people trained. They need to know how to do it. We'll do it all for our clients, so they just become users of the cloud. They don't need to be the ones running it.
So
it's a run service.
So how is this different from traditional outsourcing? Like I've seen this with DXC, I've seen this with Accenture Cloud. Everyone does what you're describing. Is the interface to that service different? Because I think one of the challenges we see in the enterprise, simple thing, audit says, hey, I need an audit report that says that all the PCI compliant data is, and scope data is, all those systems are patched. So there's you end up with this bimodal IT, the stuff that you guys don't manage, the stuff that you do manage. Compliance looks at IT and says, give me the report. Like, how do you practically solve that challenge for clients?
Yes. You want to say something?
Yeah. Let me start off with that actually. So your point was, you mentioned a couple of companies there that do provide broad-based ITO outsourcing services. That's not what we're moving into here. This is specific run and operate of that cloud, that hybrid cloud platform.
Yeah.
So you're right. We do, but we
yeah,
do.
but DXC it's not just run and operate of broad services. DXC, which used to be at one point, this part of DXC's business used to be part of HPES. They will sell you managed cloud.
Yeah.
Accenture will sell you managed cloud. Deloitte. Like there's 100 companies that will sell you managed cloud. How is this managed cloud different?
Well, it's different in a couple of ways. It's not part of a shared the private piece of the elements of the hybrid world is not shared. It's not a shared service. First of all, that's the first function, and our services are specific to the infrastructure that we're providing. We're not taking over assets and a broad base of IT organization. We're limiting ourselves to the infrastructure service layer. And in some of our platform models, we're laying ourselves to very specific niche applications, such as SAP HANA or Hadoop Big Data. We're limiting ourselves to that. It's not a broad-based service beyond the confines of that world.
Yeah, I'll take it another level, right? So we specifically go to a certain level and we don't go beyond. And what I mean by that is that if I'm DXC, right, and I say, yeah, I can do the cloud, I can do your patch, your config, your lifecycle services of the cloud and manage your spend, but you're also going to say, I will build custom environments for you, I'll build and run your applications for you, I'll take responsibility for the SLAs on the applications, I'll do all of that stuff, and it's kind of a very messy, very bespoke kind of environment. What we're doing is, if we build to our standard your infrastructure on AWS, we will use automation and tooling that we provide to monitor and log and do the compliance work. So you talked about compliance. We have a tool that will track all of the changes in the environment. We're using a lot of technology to do this. Also run that against 1,500 controls that include Cloud Security Alliance, Cloud Controls Matrix elements, and a whole bunch more that we run, and we can tell if an environment is started and it's not in compliance with those controls that it's supposed to be on, right? So it's not a your mess for less. We have to build the infrastructure a certain way, and then we'll manage it because we build it with that automation in mind. So there's a little bit of overlap there in terms of they'll do some of this stuff, but they do it a lot more custom. We do it on a very, very well-defined operational process that allows us to scale. And again, it's not a your mess for less. Somebody else, if Deloitte built the cloud environment, we're not going to take it over as is and run it. Whereas a lot of those guys will take that over and run it. They'll figure it out and they'll bring in your on-prem and they'll do all of your mess for less kind of work. We're not doing that. We're not doing IT outsourcing.
Yeah, I'm still not. I've talked to these guys as customers. They're willing to build exactly what you say. In these conversations, this is why I'm pushing back. I've heard this story from your competitors. I'm not hearing a different story. So practical problem that we run into once we sign a service agreement with this type of service, I still end up with two distinctly different operations. The cloud, whether it's a cloud built by you guys or AWS, when my service management team needs to interface with my private data center and the service management team needs to interface with the GreenLake, it's two different interfaces. So I don't get a single API or a consolidated operating model. I don't get less complexity. So I guess the question is, how do you help solve the problem of complexity of that I have cloud, I have my mess, and I still have all the ITIL operations, I still have change management, I still have everything else that comes in the enterprise.
So I'm going to say two things. First, you're right. You still have that, right? The old stuff that you have isn't cloud, right? We're not trying to take that over and manage it. We're not going to provide less complexity in that environment. The issue is that when I move to a cloud model, everything about my business processes in IT changes, right? The people, the process, and the technology is different. So if I'm going to run my old stuff, which is stable, right? It's in bimodal, right? That's your stable environment, just running as is, bunch of VMware clusters, standard tools. I've been using them for years, and my people know what they're doing. All right, great. Move over to the cloud. All of those tools, all those people, all those skills, all those processes don't work anymore. So the complexity that you would have if you did it yourself would be that you have to run two totally separate IT functions that don't actually have a lot in common. We're going to do that for you up to this operational level, not at the app tier, not kind of going a lot higher, but at the infrastructure and platform layer, we'll run that for you in a very consistent way. And if it's private cloud with Azure Stack or public cloud with Azure, it runs the same way. There's another differentiator here against a lot of the rest of the market, and I think it comes back to the whole GreenLake flex capacity model. We're also providing you the on-prem private cloud as a consumption service, right? So you get a consistent experience. You pay for what you use on-prem, you pay for what you use in the public cloud, and the size of those estates, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, dictates what you're going to pay us along the way for managing it.
So maybe I can try and clarify, because I hear what you're saying, Keith, and I hear what John's saying. I think the net is you have to separate the workloads that we're talking about, or the type of applications and that classification of applications that we're talking about, from how they actually get delivered. So we're not talking about the entire, using HPE parlance, we're not talking about the entire IT estate here. All we're talking about is net new applications that are being written for cloud. So that's the subset of applications that you're referring to supporting on GreenLake.
Yes and no, right? We'll migrate existing applications to the cloud, but oftentimes we'll have to make them cloud native along the way.
Yeah.
So it's a nuance, but yeah, we take
I think
anything that can move to AWS, we can manage the underlying infrastructure. We won't manage the application, but we can manage the infrastructure, and we migrate a lot of existing workloads. Most of the workloads that enterprises have on the cloud are migrated, not new.
Okay.
So I guess, walk me through like a practical, the interface to GreenLake. If I'm a SAP basis team and I request a new SAP landscape that's going to be a combination of old infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, that kicks off two service management requests, two different, and this is realistic application. 2 different service management requests, and then 2 different interfaces into provisioning. One provisioning for GreenLake Cloud, AWS, Azure, wherever that's at, and one set of provisioning for legacy HPE UX, because my Oracle database is still there. How do you guys make that easier for me? Because that's the problem. I need to go fast on a Fiori app, but I need that Fiori app that's living in the cloud to integrate with legacy IT. So there's not a clean break operationally. And this is where I see it fall apart. When I go to your competitors, they're like, oh, well, open a service request through my portal. Oh, no. Now I'm adding complexity to cloud. So how do you help me use the agility of cloud to integrate in my hybrid, because this is hybrid IT. That's hybrid IT to me.
Yeah, it is hybrid IT, but this is hybrid cloud, right? So we're not trying to take on all of the IT challenge in this context. We're trying to take on the new part, the cloud part. So you're exactly right. I've got an SAP basis implementation, and I'm going to run full hybrid, right? And I'm going to have 2 separate requests to start the parts of the service that need to run on my old traditional infrastructure, which may or may not actually kick off automation, or it could kick off manual processes to deploy that environment, manual processes to deploy the application, and set up the tooling and doing all of that if it's a really old environment that hasn't been modernized at all. Over on the cloud side, all of the agents, all of the application, all of the environment, the virtual private clouds, the VPCs, the accounts, everything like that is going to start up like that because it's 100% automated. And the client then, if it says, oh, I want to automate the deployment of this application, that's where you get a little bit of an additional automation work that goes in. And we can say, I want to start the basis components that run in AWS today. That'll happen through automation in a matter of an hour or less, with the data and everything set up, versus the traditional one is slower, right? Now, yeah, I've got 2 different processes. Is it less complex or more complex? I mean, I don't know the debate on that one, but it's certainly a better experience in the hybrid cloud context than it is in the traditional IT context.
Something of that. This is just a positioning question. When I think of the other big vendors out there, we've heard something from Oracle and IBM about we'll run your cloud stuff or even our cloud stuff at your site. So we'll run Oracle Cloud. It's a little different, but we run Oracle Cloud at your site. IBM has IBM Cloud Private. They're a little bit different offers, but could you position it all with a...
Certainly our GreenLake, most of our GreenLake customers today started with a private cloud environment or a private cloud virtual environment. So that's, and whether they're actually physically in the customer-owned data center or whether they're in a colo that's contracted to that customer or even contracted to us, it's still a private environment, and that's kind of where the business has started, and that's where it's scaled, because as John said earlier, and as I think we're all agreeing, the world will never go all public or all private. There will be a hybrid world. So we have to have great functionality in both spaces. So we're starting from strength in the private world, and as I said, about 18 months, 2 years ago, we started to work on the strategic challenge of how do we add the hybrid layer to bring the public cloud, the benefits of the public cloud to our customers, and that's where John's team came into play.
But I will say one thing about those 2 offers, right? And I've been at a lot of clients where I've talked to them about, say, for example, some of the Oracle on-prem cloud stuff. Those are custom implementations. Every single one of them is a snowflake, right? Kind of like the old OpenStack things. There's no such thing as I'm going to manage OpenStack. It's I'm going to manage this instance of OpenStack, which is using these releases of these OpenStack components, but not the other ones. And this one is on a different release schedule with a whole different set of components. That's a mess. We have no interest in anything around that in terms of the GreenLake hybrid cloud, certainly from a CTP perspective. Same thing, I think, with a lot of the IBM stuff. The difference here is, again, yes, those guys will do full-on custom bespoke environments for you, and they will manage them with anything you ask for. They will give you a price to do it, right? We will not. We will tell you we are going to do these things, and we'll do it at scale, right? And anything that you need on top of that, either you provide or a partner or a channel partner may provide for us. We're not in the ITO business. That's an ITO play, right? That's custom bespoke ITO, even on-prem, right? We'll take it over, we'll run it for you. So in this context, right now, we're being very prescriptive about what we're supporting. AWS, Azure, and Azure Stack. Azure Stack is incredibly prescriptive. We don't install anything that Microsoft hasn't specified and certified on that equipment. When we ship it to you, it comes exactly as Microsoft certified it.
Right.
So there's no customization of the underlying component. There's customization of the size of the hardware that we give you, and there's customization of the service catalog once we turn it on and run it. But that's about it.
So I hear you, and I was just going to suggest putting that in, if it isn't already, in an FAQ type thing, because I think first hearing the news yesterday, which was pretty recent, to make these distinctions and just put it on paper or electrons to let people know.
Yeah, actually,
this
maybe
positioning.
You know what we should do is maybe there's a follow-on here, but and Janessa, if you can kind of remind me, we've written some blog posts, right, that have been, some are on the CTP site, some are on the enterprise.next blogs. This is probably a good candidate for a blog post, so I can take that one.
I mean, if I hear this right, and I'm actually taking this as sitting over with these folks more than sitting up here. It's sort of like deploying Salesforce in the sense of they do certain things, and if you hire them to do it, they'll deploy it. And you guys sort of hit the end, and then everything becomes very customized. And I guess what I'm saying is everyone's kind of asking you about custom IT, and the GreenLake is sort of built within a certain set of parameters. If you're in that set of parameters, it's a value add, it's very, it's well designed for a certain customer with certain needs, and HPE can do everything end to end within that box. When you leave that box, it's different. Now you're in custom IT, and now you're in the whole rest of the world. So, but his question was really comparing you guys with everyone else, and your whole point is, it's like a SaaS that says basically we do what, you can unbox it and use it the way it comes, or you can hire a custom coding company to make the software do a bunch of other things, but that's not what GreenLake's trying to be.
Yeah, we have pretty hard guardrails on that. Like,
but I think that's what a lot of people here are missing is that you guys are sort of, they want to compare you to those that have no guardrails, and you're kind of saying we have a very, very defined set of areas that we work within, and if you want those areas, we're very, very good for you. And if not, we may not be the right person. And you're okay.
Not only are we good, we're going to do it at scale. It'll be faster. It'll be less expensive.
And this is exactly how public cloud operates. It's, here's a set of service offerings, take them or leave them. You make yourself fit inside the service offerings from the public cloud, rather than building a custom snowflake of infrastructure, as we're trying to get away from. And particularly in the earlier session when we had had Adam from Chef here talking about getting towards at-scale consistency, right? Fit within services and consume them as a service. Use them to assemble together the IT you require.
Now, one thing I want to make sure from a context perspective, right? So those guardrails are pretty hard, but there is a little bit of latitude when you're driving down the road, right? You're not on a rail, right? Which you are with AWS. You're on a rail with them. You get what you get, and that's it. Here, there's a little bit of the potential for customization in some of the tooling choices, some of the account structures, et cetera, but they're within a very, very narrowly defined scope, so that, because when we work with enterprise clients, nobody wants just an off-the-shelf solution entirely. There's always some requests that we need to meet, but we have these very, very limited, we'll support these 3 tools in this category, but we're not going to support any tool that you want to bring to the table. We have to have all of the agreements negotiated. We have to have all the operational processes, et cetera.
Do you have any customer case studies to kind of help us feel for, who the optimal customers are for GreenLake, or what some of the optimal environments are, applications, etc.?
Yeah, let me start that. So yes, today we have some publicly available references, which I'll send you the web links to later on. As I said, we've got about 543 customers on this platform today. I checked this morning because I was attending another session about numbers. So we got a substantial base. Actually, there is a challenge getting customers to go public about this, because to some extent they don't necessarily want to give away what they see as a competitive advantage. If we are saving them if the on-premise GreenLake proposition typically saves a customer 30%, they don't want their competitors also saving 30% on IT. So there is that element, but privately behind the scenes, customers will talk to each other. But we have some public references and some private behind the scenes references as well. But John did make a very good point about we not only need to build a structured, repeatable engine and business, both within the individual customer engagements, but also within the business as a whole. Because we don't want to have 543 customers with 543 environments that we've got to support. We want to make as much commonality as possible. And one of the guardrails that we obviously look at is this a repeatable proposition, or is it just for that one customer? If it's just for that one customer, we take a lot of being leaned on to do it just for that one customer. If we can see it then builds into becoming repeatable or part of the standard architecture, then that's a project that gets a green light pretty quickly. If it's a one-off, we sort of gets a red light pretty quickly. Is kind of where we start.
Carrying on from that question, across these 543 customers, you've clearly should have seen some trends about types of customers, scale, geodiverse. What kind of things do you see as being common factors in customers that are being very successful with this?
I just want to make a quick clarifying question. Those are clients of HPE GreenLake, not of HPE GreenLake Hybrid Cloud. So just for clarity, in case anybody's putting down numbers on this, HPE GreenLake Hybrid Cloud will be available at the end of our fiscal year, so end of October, early November.
So that's got 0 clients at the moment.
0 clients, but I can talk about what we expect from customer types as a follow-up. So go ahead.
So today the industry groupings that the early adopters of GreenLake on-prem flexible capacity, in fact, were primarily in finance, because it helped them address the agility problem and the speed to market challenges that they had in their business, where it's taking them very long periods of time to provision infrastructure capability and virtual machines. And they were being threatened by the ease of access that the business units had to the public cloud. Swipe your credit card and suddenly, the treasury guys own a couple of thousand VMs. And so that it was finance initially, but now has spread across pretty much every industry sector, including both public and private sectors. Where we see the use case particularly work well is where the customer is struggling with the challenges of modernizing their legacy infrastructure and want to move to a cloud-like environment. So an initial small proof of concept or a project-oriented infrastructure build on a GreenLake pay-as-you-go cloud-like platform. That's a big use case. And it works particularly well where the customer has unpredictable growth and a variety, and as the workloads scale, they want to have technology choices within our catalog effectively, because we have a series of catalogs that we know work well in the GreenLake, hardware catalogs that work well within the GreenLake space, and we have reference architectures that drive that optimally. So the important things there probably today is there a degree of unpredictable growth, and is there a real need to get to a modern architecture, cloud architecture from the previous legacy position.
It's an interesting thing, right? So in a lot of cases, and certainly in our advisory and professional services, the work that we've done at CTP, same thing. We've done a lot in the financial services space. Our first client engagement was with State Street Bank, and we kind of went from there. It's actually going to be different for a GreenLake Hybrid Cloud, and I'll tell you why. And I think you all know this, right? Large global banks are basically large global IT operations, right? And they're going to want to control the operations themselves. And the model that we do at CTP, where we take the clients through the transformation so that they can consume the cloud, like we've done at Vanguard, like we've done it in several other large financials that we can't use their names, that work is about getting their IT operations teams up to speed, tooled up, trained up, and changed, and the process changed so that they can do the work that we're talking about doing with GreenLake Hybrid Cloud. It's the people that don't want to do that where we see all these opportunities, and we get asked for this kind of service, and we have been for years asked for this kind of service from CTP, but we didn't want to do it in a low rent model, right? We were a little startup. We didn't want to put something together that we just cobbled together, and we didn't have the IP assets. We didn't have the scale and the scope that we have with HPE. So that was actually, for me, when HPE became the place we were going to go as CTP. That was one of the most exciting things about this, is that we were now going to be able to do something that we've been asked for years. The types of clients that have asked for this, media companies. There's a remote health provider that's asked for this. We've had conversations with financial services firms, but the smaller guys, not the big guys. A lot of ISVs, a lot of tech companies. They don't want to run this, right? So it's different industries than we've done a lot of our consulting. We've done our consulting in virtually every industry, but there's some industries that are going to be less weighted than our traditional consulting business, and particularly the large financials. They're not going to take a GreenLake hybrid cloud offering often. There'll be some, but we don't expect that to be the first place.
Yeah, and they're partly because they're probably less likely to be large-scale adopters of the public cloud as well, but they will want to keep absolute tight control of those services themselves, in some of these heavily regulated industries.
Yeah, and by the way, regulated industries, wow, it's getting noisy now. Regulated industries is fine because we can actually handle that. And that's okay because the clouds can handle regulated industries as well, and we can handle that from an operational perspective. It's how do you define where your value is, right? And most, if you go to a global financial services institution, they have thousands and thousands of IT employees, and they really want to control for everything because everything is going to be custom and bespoke because they're special, right? And that's fine. We're happy to support that, but they're not going to want us to take over and operate it, right? So we're not going to do that model in that place. And we have, I don't know, we probably have a dozen or so customers that we're talking to right now that are, we're getting to the point of they want to get into quoting and pricing and all this, even though it's not available for a while. And they range in a few different industries, right? Is that remote health provider, there's a manufacturing company, there's a publisher that we're working with. So it's kind of all over the board, but they are all, from a consistency perspective, companies that don't consider their business to be IT, whereas a bank is basically a large computer surrounded by people, right?
Daniel, you've been noticeably quiet on the panel. You've been doing some research with these guys. Is there some of that you can give us some flavor of?
I was going to say, is there any of that you disagree with, by the way?
Well, it's all the announcements is new to me as it is to everybody else in this room. So I didn't, I've not been fully briefed yet on the products to add a lot of color to it. I obviously joined the panel. We've done work, my firm with HPE with GreenLake. We were focusing on kind of trying to better understand the use case, who the user is. We want to understand what have been the factors in driving selection of an IT service provider. How well understood is consumption-based IT, versus outsourcing, to the earlier question. The perception versus reality. What are people getting who are making investments in these IT services, these hybrid or these fully supported services from GreenLake? What are they going into it thinking they're going to get? And then what did they actually find that they got? What are the constraints? What has been driving people here? What have been the enemies of agile IT? And then finally, how realistic are budget shifts? How seismic are they? Are they growing? Are they shrinking? Where are budgets coming from? Where are the cost controls? So, our research was really much higher in the funnel, whereas everything here has been much more granular. So the reason I'm quiet is because, frankly, you guys are announcing things that you've been working on behind the scenes for some time. But no, I don't disagree. I think the biggest problem we have is, like I said, if I take the seat out in the room for a minute as an analyst and influencer listening to this, I think the problem we have is we actually have a hard time when a company creates a box because we want everything to be a box, and our box is that you can mold it and shape it and make it any size we want. And I think what GreenLake's trying to do and what our research has shown is that it's Pareto. It's 80-20. There's 80% of companies could benefit from a much more structured, simplified, predictable set of solutions for their IT. But most of us in this room are the 20% that want to customize and make everything perfect. But that's expensive, it's cumbersome, and it's difficult, and it's not scalable. So I'm a fan I sat in Anna's session yesterday. I listened to the speech about consumption economics. I thought it made a lot of sense in 2011. I think it makes a lot more sense now. And I think what GreenLake is developing is a testament to what most companies need. To Jim's point, I do think we need more case studies. We need to read more about how companies are actually deploying it and realizing benefits from it, so that we are able to be well versed in discussing the benefits when we meet with clients, customers, and people who could potentially become HPE GreenLake users. So, I can share my report, by the way, with anybody that wants it. It's only a few weeks old. We surveyed 500 leaders in IT across North America and Europe, and basically wanted to understand all those factors. And so there's lots of data, lots of research. I'm not going to spout it off now, but anybody who wants it, it's free, and I'll be glad to connect you up to where to get it.
Yeah, I actually have one statement. It seems to me, from a sort of a project management perspective, and granted, I haven't seen any of your contracts and what an engagement looks like and sort of what the expectations or success criteria are, but it seems to me that there should also be a component of turning the keys over at the end of the project. So training should be part of it, and open-ended may end up being the case if that's what the customer is looking for. But in often cases, the customer is looking to gain the knowledge that you've provided them in terms of technology and skill set, and then be able to take the reins themselves.
Certainly the standard construct always includes educating the customer's own team about how to operate that particular piece of technology, or to how to operate that particular piece of software. That's included as a default. But it was interesting, linking to what Daniel said, is we have a series of standard reference architectures and models that we know work very well and are designed for certainly optimal use in the private cloud world. Very few of those, I was going to say none, that maybe is not quite true, but very few of those reference architectures survive the first engagement with the customer's own CTO people and technology specialists. So we mentioned early on about people, technology, and process, and I kind of always add another one, which is mindset, which is there is always an element of not invented here. And one of the big advantages that the public cloud vendors have in this space from operating the business, that they have a big advantage is in that you can't turn up and tell Amazon that this is how you want your S3 instance. Whereas in our case, we have a history and an industry and a customer base, a huge customer base that we've educated to actually customize the individual pieces. So we start with that reference architecture, and we end up in something that we might have changed every part number, and it performs 1% different.
I think I add to that. So you and I think that was a good point. And specifically about the GreenLake hybrid cloud offering, our goal isn't to lock our clients in for a long time. If our client says, we'd like to get started now, and so you take it over and operate it, but let's put the project in place to actually do the people, process, and technology transformation so that we can take it over later, we're very happy to do that. But I can tell you from our experience, we've started a lot of engagements where the client said, tell us how to do it, teach us, help us put this in place, help me transform, tell me what my org structure needs to look like and what the roles are and the job codes, and we start down the process with them, and then they get a look under the covers, and then they change their mind because they go, holy cow, all right, I thought I wanted that. I don't want that at all. Can you take it over and operate it for me? And until now, we've had to say no, which is a really painful thing when you're trying to make money. But we didn't want to take it over and do it poorly and do it, half-baked. We really wanted to do it the right way. So yes, we will absolutely, any client that wants to get their IT organization transformed to be able to run hybrid cloud at scale, we do that all day. And we'll continue to do that for anybody that wants it, even somebody that we've onboarded onto this GreenLake hybrid cloud platform, because we're focused on what our clients need. At the end of the day, we want them to be successful. We think that a lot of clients are going to stick around for a fair bit of time because this is really hard. It's heavy lifting. And at the end of the day, for most companies, there's no value add in doing it yourself. You're not going to do it better than we're going to do it. You're not going to do it faster than we're going to do it, right? In theory, right? You can customize it, but at the end of the day, the base capability we're giving you is, ITIL services through automation. And everybody's got that. There's nothing differentiated about how you do, alerts and event management and patch and config. We just do it through automation, so we make it quick and scalable, and we're doing it for everybody in a consistent way, which allows us to drive down the cost per unit. We're thinking like a cloud provider, right? It's like, what would Amazon do? How would we deliver this service if we were thinking like a cloud provider? And we would limit the amount of customization so that we can, at scale, when we have one client and we have 10 clients and 100 clients that we're doing this for, our operational processes in the back room are very, very heavily automated, and they're consistent. Everybody gets the same experience. That's how we keep the unit cost down. In the old days, Tim and I, we've been to cloud conferences back 2009, kind of going back in that time frame. A lot of people would talk about, why are they better? Well, one of the factors, one of the metrics is the number of server instances per admin in the data center, right? You've heard that, servers per admin, right? We got to think the same way. We're focused on driving up the number of components that we're managing in your cloud, in that data center, in that hybrid cloud environment. Our operational support amount of labor per output has to continue to go down, 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 down through automation. So we think like the cloud providers when we do this. That allows us to basically scale, reduce the cost, and at the end of the day, you're not going to win new business in the market because you do that better than us. That's not ever going to happen.
In fact, just as a proof point, as I said, we've been in this business for 7 years. Our average contract duration is 4 years. So in fact, and that scenario hasn't happened. What we've seen is relentless growth, quarter on quarter, year on year, in the existing customer base.
Yeah, a lot of
they consume more.
Yeah, a lot of the GreenLake pipeline, which continues to grow at a pretty high rate, is people adding capacity to existing GreenLake estates. It just is continuous, just growing.
I mean, I guess there's an element of human nature in that if it's working, if it's in and working, and it helps me as an IT leader scale and meet the business need, why would I want to challenge that model and potentially risk going back to the bad old days? I suppose there's kind of a bit of human nature, I think, in there. Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys. I think this has been a really interesting conversation, and we've heard quite a lot about the existing private cloud and the impending hybrid cloud solution from HPE GreenLake. Thank you guys very much for joining us. We will be back with more coffee talk sessions starting at 5:30 this afternoon. In the gap in between, there's going to be some V Brown Bag Tech Talks being produced, and so we'll see you in a different stream for that. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.